we've got the, the one just last week, and then we had that other one that was even more extreme in most places in July of 2018. So this is just in my yard in particular. Last week I got to 115. I'm in Ramona in San Diego County, and the wind was very light. The humidity was low, but it wasn't super low. And compare that to back in July, which got a little bit hotter at 118, and it was very windy, and the humidity was even lower. The days were longer. That was early July, if you remember, compared to early September, shorter days now. And so it was pretty clear the difference in the effects on the trees between that heat wave last week, which was a few degrees cooler, if you can say that, and the July 2018 heat. There was essentially just small time leaf damage on any healthy trees in my yard in last week's heat. There's little to no fruit drop. However, back in July 2018, there was damage down mature leaves, and mature branches were even damaged a foot or more back, and there was a lot of fruit drop. There are here's what we saw, and here's what you can expect from this recent heat. Since it happened at the end of summer, what you can expect is possibly a slight reduction in the bloom on your tree in the spring. And that's because avocados bloom on that new wood that grew over the summer. And so there's not enough time now to sort of regrow that and mature it in order to get a full bloom like you would have had in the spring. And then you might have some amount of fruit drop on like immature fruit. But the immature fruit that we have on our trees now is pretty big, even though it's mostly immature. And big fruit is a lot tougher than small fruit. So in that July 2018 heat wave, which happened, I think it was July 6th, 7th, 8th, the very beginning of summer, near the solstice, day was really long. It was even hotter, and all the fruit was a lot smaller, especially on late blooming trees. So this photo right here is my reed tree, which in early July, reeds can still be blooming. And so all the fruit was very small, even pea size or smaller. And that ends up meaning a lot of fruit drop. However, on the other hand, since it happened in early summer, there was all summer for new growth to come back. And so the bloom during the next spring was still pretty good in general on all of my trees. And so that's sort of, I guess, an advantage of an early season heat wave. So what can we do to help our trees through high heat? And what are some of the things that affect a tree in terms of how it reacts or deals with high heat? The main thing is water. And the main thing about watering is to do it before the heat starts. And then the health of the tree matters. We can shade it. We can whitewash branches. We can spray the clay product called Surround. We can spray it with water to get evaporative cooling. And then mulch, and even maybe growing a lawn underneath might help, or other vegetation under an avocado tree might help it deal with high heat. So water is by far the most important thing. And I've probably learned most about how important that is and why it's important from Ben Faber, who is a farm advisor up in Ventura County. He's been working on avocados for decades, and here is how he put it to me. He said, get the water get the water on the tree before the heat, because when it becomes severe, when the heat becomes severe, the plant shuts down transpiration and can't take up water. The plant cools itself by, the avocado tree cools itself by emitting water out of the little holes in its leaves. And it can't do that in high heat. Those stomates just close up. And so you've got to get the water on the tree before the heat starts. A cooler way that he put it to me was preload the tree before the stress. Your mama was right. Start the day with a good breakfast. In other words, you don't wait until you're hungry in the middle of the day to eat. You eat before you're hungry in order to continue on with the work you have to do before the stress starts. So in terms of a reaction to high heat, how healthy the tree is going into the heat matters a lot. This picture here it shows 3 trees in my yard. I took this picture, I think, today or yesterday. The dead little thing in the middle, these 3 trees are all the same age. The dead little tree in the middle is an edronol, and it was highly unhealthy going into the heat. The heat cooked it to death. The thing's done. The 2 other trees in the background, on the left is a Carmen, on the right is a Nabal. They essentially did fine. They got a little tiny bit of leaf burn. All 3 trees, same age. The edronol was unhealthy going into the heat. And if that's the case, your tree is pretty much done for. If the heat is anything over, 105, 110, it's pretty much impossible to save it. How can a tree be unhealthy? If it's got root damage or root competition from other big trees, if you haven't been watering it well for the past few months, if it's already sunburned, which damages the tree's ability to get water out to the leaves at the ends of its branches. And then also, if a tree's got a heavy fruit load, that fruit is is kind of a source of stress on the tree. And so usually trees with heavier fruit loads have a harder time dealing with high heat. So what can you do? Shade is the best way to protect a young tree during the heat, actually during the heat. Water is the best thing to do before the heat for any tree. Shade is the best thing you can do for a small tree that you can get shade over. You want to get it over the top, and then you want to also usually protect the south and the west sides of the canopy. Any density of shade is helpful, but 70% or more is even better. If you can get something that's super dense, 100%, put a piece of plywood over the top of the tree on a little scaffold. That's great. Use anything, an umbrella, a table, a chair. I've used all these things in the past when I've been in a pinch, and you just want to get that little tree, a little bit of relief. Here's a grower in Riverside, which, as you know, gets super hot. These photos he took during the heat just this last week. And when he put in like a half a dozen avocado trees recently, and at the same time he built this structure to put over the top of them during heat. So he sort of rolls it back and rolls it out when it's extra hot. And it's a little bit of time and work and money to invest in that, but his trees sure came through the heat well. If you've got any exposed branches, you've got to whitewash those using the classic thing to use is just a white latex paint, because those exposed branches will sunburn. And then a kind of a newer product is a clay product called Surround, or Surround WP. It's a powder that you can mix with water and then spray on your trees. On the left, you see like a close-up of what it looks like on a leaf. What it basically does in terms of sunburn and heat protection, well, sun protection, is it acts like a sunscreen or a sunblock or a form of shade. Um, you can also spray this on branches to replace the white latex paint. But I'm not so sure. I sprayed it on my trees for the first time in a big way during this last heat wave last week, and I tried to get a like an evaluation of how effective it was. So, for example, on that picture on the right, that's a Nimlio avocado tree, and what I did was I just sprayed one of the uh, clusters of new flush on that tree to see how it would compare to the unsprayed clusters on the same tree. And frankly, I didn't see any difference. The new growth burned just as much as the new growth on the unsprayed um, uh, clusters, the new unsprayed new flush on that tree. So I'm not yet sure how effective Surround is at sort of preventing sunburn to new leaves anyway, or even older leaves on an avocado tree. But um, what I'm very sure about in terms of efficacy is evaporative cooling, just meaning spraying the leaves with water. This has been done forever on trees, specifically even on avocados. It's been done for 100 years. And in 1963, they did a study of its effect, and they found that the temperature reductions on the foliage, especially the exterior foliage of a tree, was a 5 to 7 degrees. That might not sound like a lot, but remember the difference between, say, a heat of 110 and 117. That could mean basically none of your fruit drops or all of your fruit drops. It can mean a lot. During that heat wave last week, I sprayed down. I was actually up at my mom's house, and she has a fuerte tree in her yard, and so I sprayed down some leaves of her fuerte tree, and I took a picture. On the left is a picture before I sprayed the tree. So you see the wilting of the leaves, especially that leaf in the middle on the bottom. And then after I sprayed the tree, I waited 15 minutes and I took the picture on your right. And you can see that all of the leaves are, again, turgid. They're looking happy and healthy. And the heat while I was doing this was over 110. And so you can, it's nice to just see with your own eyes that the tree is telling you that it appreciates that kind of help. So as I said, this has been tried or done for a long time. This is, in this photo here, what you're seeing is some tall sprinkler risers with a big rainbird sprinkler at the top that have been put in a very old grove in Glendora in LA County, where the old Silent Ranch, Judge Silent, had a big avocado ranch up there. And so people have been doing this forever. So if I were, in that grove, I would be running those sprinklers every hour for 15 minutes or so and cooling down the trees. And that would really work. Here's my attempt in my own yard, just with a smaller tree. So I just took a poly tube and ran it up the stake of this small avocado tree and put a micro sprinkler on the sprayer mode at the top of the tree, and ran it over the top of the tree, and it did the job. It did the job excellently. So unfortunately, I only did this on the second day of that heat wave on September 6th. So the new flush had already been cooked on the first day, and I wish I had done it earlier so I could have seen how well it helped. But next time, I'm sure there'll be another heat wave. Um, if you've got a heat wave early in the year, say June, July, early July, and your tree's still flowering or your fruit is small, um, I've seen that it's very helpful to do this evaporative cooling. On, I think it was around June 10th of last year, my reed was still flowering and it had some young fruit on it. And we got to just about 105. Not that big of a deal, but 105 while a tree is flowering or while it has young fruit can mean the fruit will drop, and it can also kill the pollen. And so it can mean no pollination as well. So I took the time to spray down this tree a bunch during the days of that heat wave, and it seemed to really pay off. The tree set a ton of fruit, so much fruit that it broke a branch, and I had to, prop up a couple branches, because it set so much fruit. And I ended up having to thin a lot of the fruit. And so, but it appeared to work. It appeared to save a lot of that newly set fruit and a lot of those flowers, flowers that were yet to open as well. Mulch, especially like a coarse woody mulch or a heavy leaf mulch, can help a lot to get an avocado tree, especially like a little avocado tree, through heat, because it cools the upper soil profile. If you've ever seen avocado roots, they'll grow very shallowly if it's cool enough and moist enough in the upper soil levels. If not, they'll cook and they'll only grow deeper in the soil. And so mulch can help. One thing I noticed that was interesting, just driving around in the past week or so and seeing which trees around Southern California had damage and which didn't. I ended up driving around quite a bit from LA County down here to San Diego. And one thing I noticed that was a bit curious was that wherever I saw an avocado tree growing in a lawn, that tree got by pretty well. I don't even think I saw one with any heat damage on it. This photo I took this morning. So this is a tree in Poway. Poway got over 110, and I don't see any damage on it. So what can we say about the tolerance of different varieties?
Greg, we've lost your audio.
Sorry?
We had lost your audio for about a minute.
Is it on now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Sorry. Should I go back or no?
Just a minute's worth.
Okay. Well, what I said about this slide was just that I've noticed that avocado trees growing in lawns, which is generally like an ill-advised practice. People say don't do it. I noticed that avocado trees growing in lawns did really well through that last heat wave. I thought that was curious. My guess is, well, the tree's probably healthy going in if the lawn is healthy because it's getting watered well. And then there's a certain amount of evaporation from that lawn going up into the tree, so the humidity is cooler. The humidity is higher. Anyway. Okay, so moving on to heat tolerance of avocado varieties. As I said, there are different kinds of heat tolerance. Take the Pinkerton as example. The Pinkerton variety is interesting in that I've noticed on my Pinkerton and many other Pinkertons that the foliage of the Pinkerton is not very tolerant of heat. However, the fruit is tenacious. It almost doesn't drop. This picture in the middle is the Pinkerton fruit that has gone through heat on a hillside in inland San Diego County. And the photo on the right is a large matured Pinkerton tree just laden with fruit in Redlands near Riverside, near San Bernardino, a very hot climate. So you've got that. And then on the other hand, there's the structure of a tree and how that sort of protects the fruit from heat. Hass tends to have a bit of an open structure, and the fruit is often held outside of leaf coverage and exposed to the sun. And so you tend to get more sunburned fruit with Hass compared to some other varieties. The variety on the right is a lamb, and that's a branch being lifted up. So you see that all that fruit is held inside the protection of all of that foliage and protected from sunburn. So that's something that's nice about lamb, and gem grows the same way. So those varieties protect their fruit better during high heat compared to Hass. So I've tried to group varieties into about 3 levels of heat tolerance. I've got my high, medium, and low. And if there's a question mark, it's because I haven't seen enough trees, or my tree is too young to tell, or so on. So I'm just uncertain about those varieties. But the other ones I'm pretty certain about. So in your high tolerance, you've got those varieties there, especially the reed and the lamb. Medium, moderate tolerance, Fuerte and Charwil, Carmen, I'm pretty certain about those. They're in the middle somewhere. Low tolerance, meaning weak in the heat. Hass is definitely weak in the heat. Maybe Nimlio and Helen. So here's a photo of a Hass tree that just went through that heat last week. And you can see that it's been burned back. Some branches have even apparently died back a foot or two, and there's just a lot of foliage damage on that Hass. The next photo is of a Fuerte that is adjacent to this tree. So they're really growing the same microclimate, same conditions. And here's the Fuerte. You'd be hard pressed to even find any damaged foliage on that Fuerte. These photos, these trees were in Poway, and so Poway got hot. It didn't get to 118 or 120 like Ontario or Chino did. So Fuerte certainly isn't the toughest tree, but it's tougher than Hass. Reed is definitely one of the toughest that I know of. This is the reed in my yard, and I took this photo a couple days ago. So after that 115 degrees, you almost find no damage. There was a single fruit that dropped, and a couple of leaves are like slightly bleached, but it basically went through just perfect. And lamb went through just about as well, almost totally undamaged. So those trees are tough in the heat. And I have to say, they're both tough in terms of foliage and fruit. Foliage for sure, but they even hold on to their fruit pretty well. Let me just say one last thing. Let me repeat one last thing before we get off the topic of heat, which is water is key. There's no substitute for watering your tree and watering it before the heat hit. It's the best, most important thing you can do. All right, varieties. I just love avocado varieties. So I'm always taking pictures of them and just trying to taste more and more, and they're so fun. So I'll talk a little bit about my personal favorite varieties and why I like them, and then I'll try to give some ideas for varieties for a year-round harvest in case you have room or desire for more than one tree or more than one variety. And then lastly, I'll briefly touch on some new varieties that um, have recently or are coming down the pipeline from breeders. But first, what makes an avocado variety good, specifically good to eat? Um, this is clearly a subjective thing. Everyone doesn't agree on what they like in an avocado, but there are some there is some general agreement that an avocado full of fiber or strings isn't a good thing. I hate them. and and a good flavor to you anyway is important. Does the skin peel? I don't care that much if the skin peels, but depends how you're using the avocado. But I know that's important in some situations or to some people. What I do care about is whether the skin leaves grit in the flesh when you cut it open. That's a little bit annoying. Some varieties do that, like Ball, Gem, and then sometimes the skin, the inner peel, uh, it leaves a little bit of bitterness if you accidentally sort of scrape it while you're scooping the avocado out. That's not so good. Small seed, everyone likes a small seed. I think small seed means more avocado. And then some varieties like Fuerte can do this, especially if it's late season Fuerte. The coat on the seed will stick to the flesh. So when you try to take the seed out, you've got to also peel that seed coat off the flesh. That's a bit annoying. Then, differently, what makes an avocado variety good to grow? Because maybe the avocado is the most delicious thing in the world, but does a tree of that variety produce well and produce consistently? And how long is the harvest time? It's one of those most amazing things about Hass. You can almost get year-round avocados from just a Hass tree. That's not the same with many others. Um, and then how tolerant is it to heat and cold? Depending where you live, that might be important. If you live near the beach, who cares? But if you live inland, that stuff's important. Pest and disease resistance, persea mite and root rot and laurel wilt, and even salinity issues, like how tolerant of salinity is the variety. And I think it's important to remember that we home growers don't care about the same things that commercial farmers care about. So 95 of like the US avocado percent of the US avocado consumption is Hass. Why do commercial farmers grow Hass so much? Well, it has a lot of advantages for commercial farmers. One thing is it hides skin damage. So when those pieces of fruit get knocked around as they're being picked and sorted and transported, that damage is hidden from us. It's not good from a consumer's point of view. That photo on the right is a reed, and if you bang around a reed, you're gonna see it. And so that's why, that's not why, but that's one of the reasons more commercial farmers don't grow reeds. And then they have other concerns. Does it respond to ethylene ripening? Does it take well to refrigeration? Because I mean, some of these avocados have to travel a long distance. They're held in cold storage for a long time. And then marketability. And lastly, these days, basically, if an avocado variety isn't Hass or doesn't look like Hass, it's almost impossible to even bother with it for most commercial farmers. So here's my 1, 2, 3. If I could have only one avocado tree in my yard, I would pick a Hass, no doubt. There are many reasons, but probably the main reason is that Hass has such a long harvest season. You can pick good Hass off of a tree in Southern California from around February or March all the way through June or July. If you live close to the beach, you can let that fruit hang even longer. If you live farther up north, the season's going to be later, but Hass has such a long harvest season that it's hard to beat. It also produces well and it tastes great. Um, and then if I could have two trees, I'd probably go Hass and Reed because their harvest seasons complement each other. So Hass might be February to July, and Reed starts in July. So Reed tastes great from July through September, even later. I had a Reed with dinner tonight. It was delicious. Um, and then if I could have 3 avocado trees, my third might be Fuerte, would probably be Fuerte. It makes a pretty good threesome because Fuerte is a little earlier than Hass. You might start picking Fuerte as early as Thanksgiving, but it doesn't taste great until like January, February. And then Fuerte is also a B-type flower. So if you did have that threesome, you would have enhanced pollination capabilities. That's Hass and Reed are A types and Fuerte is a B type. Complementary flower types are not necessary, but it never hurts. So here's how it might go. Fuerte, then Hass, then Reed. That's not the whole year though, right? Because there's the fall. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just make a note though that just on a very personal thing, I would not want to be without Gwen. Gwen, there's something about Gwen that is just an awesome tasting avocado. And so while it might not be one of my first 3, I guess it would have to be my 4th. I don't know. Gwen's taste so good, and they're very productive trees, incredibly productive trees. There are lots of other top tier avocado varieties and lots of other just really good avocado varieties to grow. But I guess I'd say my other top tier varieties in terms of all of those qualities for good eating and good a good tree to grow. In other words, they're productive and so on. Pinkerton, Charlevoix, Carmen. Carmen is basically a quirky Hass. I'll say more about it in a minute, or maybe I won't. That picture on the top right is Carmen fruit. That Carmen fruit so Carmen is unique in that it's basically a Hass. The tree looks a lot like a Hass, and the fruit looks almost identical to Hass, and the fruit tastes almost identical to Hass. The difference between Carmen and Hass is that in some locations, Carmen has what they call an off bloom, where it flowers again in an unusual time from like August, September, October. And the usual avocado flowering time is roughly spring, March, April, May. So because of that off bloom of Carmen, it has a second crop of fruit that is mature essentially a year later, meaning the next August, September, October. And so Carmen is a cool variety in that way. So if you live, basically if you live within, I don't know, roughly 10-ish, 15-ish miles of the ocean, it's likely that your Carmen will have that off bloom and you'll be able to get 2 crops from it each year. Inland, like where I am in Ramona, it doesn't have that off bloom. And so for my purposes, it's almost identical to a Hass. But Jamboise is good, Gem is good, Surprise is good, and so many more. But I don't think you could go wrong if you planted any one of those trees. I don't know anyone who would be disappointed with any of those varieties. So if you want more than one, here's a way to get, you could pick one from each group out of these three like seasons of harvest, and you would have almost year-round avocados. In the winter, you could pick any one of those, Fuerte, Charwood, Pinkerton, Surprise. You'll harvest those in the winter. Their harvest seasons aren't all at exactly the same time. Like Fuerte is a little earlier than Charwood, for example, but they're all roughly winter or late winter into spring. And then spring, Hass, Gem, Gwen. Gwen is late spring, early summer, but summer, Reed, Lamb, maybe Nibal. And then that's going to get you, those varieties will get you to at least October. But what do you do from October? So this is the rough part about getting year-round avocados. There's a gap between the late varieties like Reed, Lamb, Nibal, and the beginning of the early varieties. It's hard to fill that gap. It can be done, but it's a little bit hard. So if you have a Carmen and it gets that off bloom, well, then you might be able to fill that gap with your your off bloom Carmen crop. Or Mexicola, Stewart, Bacon. Those are some earlier varieties, but especially Mexicola. Mexicola is the earliest variety I know. You can eat Mexicolas as early as August. September, October, especially September, October. And so Mexicolas can start when your Reeds stop. Stewarts are a little later. They're maybe more like November, December, even January. And so you could fill the gap with a Stewart. Stewarts are delicious. They can be a little stringy up near the stamen, but they're very tasty. And then Bacon. Bacon is a little early. Bacon is a little later than those like Mexicola or Stewart, but it's a little earlier than Fuerte or Hass. So Bacon's taste especially good around Christmas or January. Okay, I'll wrap things up by just saying a few things about some new avocado varieties. Gem is relatively new. It's kind of new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's not been around forever. So Gem is a variety. Gem is capitalized because it stands for Gray E. Martin. Gray Martin was a staff research associate with the University of California. He helped in the avocado breeding program that has been going on through UC Riverside for since the 60s, 50s even. And he helped select this variety. Gem, what's nice about Gem is that it tastes great. I mean, it's a delicious avocado. What's unique about Gem, because there are a lot of other avocados that are delicious. What's unique about Gem is that you see that tree on the right, that's a Gem tree that is 7 years old. It's got to be about half the size of a Hass tree that is 7 years old. That tree, I would guess, is under 10 feet, maybe reaching 10 feet or so right there. Anyway, so Gem is a far less vigorous, slower growing tree, but it's also very productive. And so if you lift up those leaves there, you'll find a lot of fruit under those leaves. And so Gem is a nice variety, especially if you're strapped for space. It tastes good. Its harvest season is about the same as Hass, just maybe a tad later than Hass, but it's basically the same as the main season of Hass, like April, May, June. And the seed's a little bigger on a Gem, and the skin is a little thicker. But overall, it's a super good avocado. And it has maybe a little bit more heat tolerance than Hass, and a little bit more cold tolerance too, just in my observations. And I've heard the same from some other people as well. And then lastly, I'll just say a couple things about really new avocado varieties, new avocado varieties. There's a variety out of South Africa called Maluma that we don't really have here yet. All these varieties on this slide here are varieties that we don't truly have yet, but they're sort of here and they're sort of on the way. So Maluma is it looks a lot like a Hass. It has a slightly smaller seed, and I've never tasted one myself, but I've been told by people who have that it's really good, and it tastes basically the same as Hass. What's good about it is people like it's very productive for one thing, and its harvest season is actually similar to Gem in that it's just slightly later than Hass. Apparently, I don't have the tree, but this is just stuff that I've heard from growers. And the tree architecture of Maluma is a little bit more like Gem in that it's not quite as vigorous as Hass, and it's more amenable to growing in an upright fashion with like a central leader. Hass wants to spread more and become a big tree. So that might be good for a home grower, like a backyard, and it could also be good for commercial farmers too, because they can do more things with it. For one thing, the developer of Maluma, a nursery called Alespesta in South Africa, they've been trialing trellising the Maluma trees. So it's almost like a grape trellis. Actually, it's like what they do with apples, where they just espalier them, and they have rows and rows of espaliered Maluma avocado trees, and they've been getting some pretty good results with that. Anyway, here in California, we have a breeding program. There's a breeding program through UC Riverside, like I said, that's been around forever. And a fairly recent release, although it's not truly released yet, it might be released sometime soon, but Marvel, that's the fruit you see on the right. It also went under the name or the number BL 516. That's a unique fruit in that I haven't eaten a Marvel, but I hear from people who are very reliable that it's a delicious piece of fruit. And then what's interesting about it is that it's a B-type flower. And so, there aren't, the trouble with, for commercial farmers is that most B-type flowers don't have fruit. Most B-type avocado trees don't make fruit that turns black and looks like Hass. And so they have trouble selling that fruit for a decent price. And so what's promising about Marvel is the fruit could be sold well and at a good price. Anyway, the UC avocado breeding program is working on trying to release 4 more varieties in the next few years. And they used to call them by other names or other numbers, and now they're just referring to them as UC1, UC2, UC3, and UC4. Some of them, actually, I'd say 3 of them look a lot like Hass fruit. UC1, 2, and 4 look a lot like Hass fruit. And the seasons of some of them are very similar to Hass. Personally, I'm most interested in UC3, which is a smaller, rounder fruit, and it has an early harvest season. Because in my own yard and in my own situation, I would love to be able to fill that like fall winter gap with higher quality fruit. And so I would love for that UC3 to pan out as a good producer and a delicious avocado to fill that fall and winter harvest gap. And so we can only hope, we'll see. Maybe in a few years, the trees will be patented and released, and we'll start to be able to actually, I mean, commercial farmers are going to have access to them a long time before we home growers will, but eventually maybe we'll get access to them and get some even better avocados along the way. Okay, thanks a lot for listening to my presentation. And I want to say thanks to the California Rare Fruit Growers for inviting me to do this presentation. And also they're just a great organization. They help specifically with avocados in a big way. CRFG volunteers have helped forever with the avocado variety collection in Irvine. And they also, especially the Orange County chapter, they make rare varieties available to home growers like us by grafting them and selling them. And so I appreciate that so much. I've bought some of my own trees from them. And then the California Avocado Society, which has been around for over 100 years and is so incredibly useful if you want to learn about avocados. And if you want to read some old Avocado Society yearbooks and get loads of other avocado information, you have to go to avocadosource.com and support them too. It's a nonprofit, and they do so much to get good information out to everyone and make it available. And I've learned so much just through that website. You can also get a little bit more avocado information on my own website if you want. So with that, I'll say thanks, and I'd love to entertain any questions you might have or talk about any other topics.
Okay, Greg, thank you so much. We do have some questions in the chat area. Let me go back and take a quick look to see where the first question is.
Dawn, should I stop my screen share?
Yes, you can stop that.
Okay.
So the first question I see is they wanted you to reiterate what the temperatures were where you were taking your pictures. The heat tolerance.
Of like specific trees, and well, the trees, the photos of the trees were taken in all different places actually, but primarily either in my own yard, which is in Ramona, or in Glendora, which is in LA County, or Poway, which is in San Diego County. Yeah, if you want to ask about a specific
Greg, it was specifically about last Saturday and Sunday here in Southern California. Thank you.
Oh, so you want to know where the photos that were taken then were? They were taken in all those different places, but
Oops, sorry, I'm trying to unmute everyone. You'll need to unmute yourselves.
Okay, Greg, if you can hear me, my specific question was, what was the temperature specifically last Saturday and Sunday when this heat wave hit us?
Are you asking for in Ramona where he lives?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
yeah, okay, gotcha. So on my weather station, It was 115.9 on Saturday, and it was 114.7 on Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next question is from Darlene. Do multiple varieties grafted onto the same trunk do okay?
Yeah, they can. Some years back, I grafted onto a tree in my mom's yard, actually. So it's had two varieties growing on it for years, a Fuerte and another seedling variety. And they both fruit well and they both get along well. The only challenge can be that each variety has different growth habits. And so, for example, the one variety grows very upright and the Fuerte grows like this. And so the tree almost wants to form like an L kind of thing. And so the challenge is just sort of pruning to make the tree a little bit balanced sometimes. But in terms of fruit production and the health of the tree, multi-graft trees can do just fine. I have some other multi-graft trees in my own yard that do just fine.
So another question is there anything we can do to help a Hass variety, Hass tree, that were stressed out by the recent hot weather?
Yeah, in terms of what we can do now, you want to check for exposed branches because what's going to happen is whatever leaves have been burned, eventually those leaves are going to fall off. And if those leaves fall off and expose branches to the sun, then you want to whitewash those branches to try to protect them from getting sunburned. And then otherwise, there's not much else to do except just try to care well for the tree like you always would. Irrigate it well, mulch it if you can, that kind of thing. But the main danger after both heat damage or freeze damage is just protecting exposed bark with whitewash.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And a question from Tim, in coastal Encinitas, can you grow an avocado tree on the northeast side of a house, or do you need more winter sun?
No, you can. In fact, funny enough, I was in Leucadia a couple weeks ago and saw some really good avocado trees growing on the northeast side of a house there. And so, yeah, you can. The only thing is, you know, in the winter, it's going to get quite a bit of shade, like in the later half of the day. And so it might be a little bit slower growing, but eventually it's going to, unless it's a very tall, like 2-story house, eventually it's going to grow up and get more sunlight, and it should be okay in the long run. You know, you don't have to worry about frost if you're close enough to the beach there in Encinitas. And so that would be the danger of, say, growing on the northeast side of my own house, because it would be the cold. I wouldn't want to grow on the north side of my house, but you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, it should work fine.
The next question from Kevin, how did your Don, is it Gilogli? I don't know how to pronounce it, make it through the heat wave?
I don't actually have a Dongalogli tree myself. And the Dongalogli, the only mature Dongalogli tree that I know is in Point Loma. And so it doesn't, you know, it didn't deal with real heat. It was a mile from the ocean, and it doesn't have a problem. Didn't have a problem. And so no, I'm not sure about Dongalogli in the heat. I'd love to hear if anyone has a Dongalogli in a hot location, but sorry, I don't know.
And the last question on the chat is, any malumas available for sale anywhere? And have other types been successfully espaliated?
So Maluma is either, I'm actually not sure of its status at the moment. It's either still in quarantine or just out. I know that Brokaw Nursery up in Ventura has been growing them for a while, and they're going to be selling them to commercial farmers soon if they haven't started just now. And then what I've also been told is that the owner of the variety, Alaspesta Nursery in South Africa, they also want to make Maluma trees available through other nurseries, and so maybe we'll be able to get them in a few years. But they're not, as far as I know, they're not available to be purchased anywhere right now in California. Sorry, was there a second question? Did I forget?
Espaliers.
Oh yeah. So the reason that Maluma seems so conducive to that way of growing is that the branches are flexible, and so any tree that basically has flexible branches and that also doesn't grow too vigorously, so there would be so much pruning involved. If like a Hass is probably too vigorous to espalier well. But Lamb and Gem both have the qualities of Maluma that might make it make them conducive to trellising. That being said, I don't know anyone who has actually tried Lamb and Gem on a trellis. I'm actually trying them right now, but my trees are very, very young. And so maybe in a couple of years, I'll be able to say, oh yeah, Lamb and Gem work on a trellis well too, but I can't say yet. But it seems like they would, just because they have the same tree architecture and general vigor. And they also tend to both grow leaves over the fruit after the fruit sets, which is important on a trellis, because like a Hass, if the fruit were exposed on a trellis, that fruit's going to get sunburned. So you want a variety that's going to grow leaves over the fruit after the fruit sets also. So Lamb and Gem are the varieties that I've heard suggested for trellising, and we'll see. I'm sure other people are trying them now too, so we'll see.
And another one is, what are your thoughts on spraying honey to attract the bees?
My thoughts are, I wish it worked. I've tried it so many times, and I've never seen any evidence that it actually works. It definitely attracts bees. The bees will be all over the honey, but does it actually affect pollination, improve pollination on the flowers on the tree? I've never seen evidence that it actually does. So as far as my experiences go with trying that, it hasn't seemed to work. You know, I've heard people say that, well, I sprayed honey on the blossoms and then I got such good fruit set. Well, how in the world do you know that that fruit set wouldn't have occurred without spraying the honey?
Right.
You know, like if you got good fruit set on a Hass after you sprayed honey on it, well, Hass sets a massive amount of fruit all the time. So yeah, so I don't know anyone that's actually like done a proper trial on it, and I haven't either. So yeah, I don't know if it works, but I've never seen clear evidence that it does work on my own little attempts at trying it out. I don't think it hurts either, but.
Expensive.
A question from David Weber. When does the Hass fruit finish setting, and when should I prune? It's a 12 by 12, 5 years in the ground from a 15-gallon.
Yeah, so Hass will generally flower the most in March, April into May. And so it's going to set its fruit, especially toward the April, May end of that. It depends where you live, though. It might, sometimes that it can be earlier than that. And then a good time to prune, it depends a bit on where you live, and it depends a bit on how hard you want to prune. But if you're trying to keep a tree down to a given size, like say your tree is 12 feet now, and you want to keep it at 12 feet, then what I would do is sometime this winter, prune it back down to 12 feet. If it gets another 6 inches of growth the rest of this summer, fall, maybe you prune it back down to 12 feet sometime in the winter. If you're close to the beach, do it anytime, December, January, February. For me, since I'm in an area that gets some frost, I like to do it a little bit later. I like to do it more like March, because I like to keep that growth on the tree until there's no chance of frost, because if there is a damaging frost in January or February, I want that growth that I'm going to prune out to protect the growth under it that I'm going to keep. And so I sort of use that as my frost blanket, right? Like if you're in a frost prone area, then it's better to prune a little bit later, more like March. You're inevitably going to prune out some branches that will flower and potentially fruit, no matter when you prune. That's just the way it is. Well, actually, that's not totally true. But what you want to do is basically also do your pruning, get your pruning done, your major pruning done by about the end of June. If you prune any later than that, then the risk is, just like with heat damage late in the summer, if you pruned in July, what you're doing is pruning off a lot of that fruiting wood that's going to bloom in the spring. And it's best to get your pruning done by, say, the end of June. Whatever you cut off probably in mid to late July and onwards, you're probably going to reduce your next spring bloom more than if you had cut off wood before that time. Sorry, I feel like that doesn't make a whole lot of clear sense, but let me know if that didn't quite answer your question.
And Casey's asking you, when did you know you had the avocado itch?
It might have been while I was actually in Peace Corps in Lesotho in Africa, because I grew up here in Southern California. I grew up in an area that used to be all avocado and citrus orchards, and I just took it all for granted. And then I went to Lesotho, where there's 0 avocado trees. There's really no avocados available even at the stores. And then one time I found some avocados at the store, and it was the most, I realized how much I missed them. And then I think ever since I came home, I just realized how important they were to me. And I think that's when the itch started in a heavy way.
Okay, the next question from Rita is about fertilizing. How do you fertilize, and do you use gypsum?
I do little. I don't use gypsum. I've never used gypsum. My understanding, just from talking to researchers and reading their literature, is that gypsum is only useful if you have root rot, or if you're dealing with a soil that's high in sodium. And I don't have those issues in my yard, so I've never had a need to use gypsum myself. I do a very low fertilizing kind of thing on my own trees. I basically use some compost, a little bit of my chicken manure in that compost, and I do a lot of deep wood chip mulch, and that's about it. I've never done anything else really.
Okay, and one more question. Your thoughts on keeping out rodents? What do you do?
Well, luckily for myself, I don't have a big rodent problem in my own yard. But yeah, in terms of like say squirrels, in terms of like say squirrels or rats, you've got to either get a cat that's going to do some hunting for you, or you've got to trap them. That's what I've done when I've had to do it. And yeah, trapping or having a good hunting cat is very useful. I used to have one of those, and it not so good for squirrels. I don't think but for rats, mice, and rabbits, my cat was very useful.
And earlier I'd asked a question about persea mites, and Greg sent me a couple of links that I put out in the chat area of how to manage persea mites and some of the ways to take care of them. So I just went ahead and put that in the chat area, those links. So you're welcome to copy those. And a question about the surround. Would surround or whitewash on the leaves help with mites? Would it like suffocate the mites?
You know, that's a good question, and I'm not so sure. What I have read, not from an avocado grower, but I've because they use it on apples. They use it both to protect the leaves from pests, and then they spray it on fruit to protect the fruit from sunburn. And what I have heard is, what I did read is that you don't want to use it too consistently, because you'll end up basically suffocating your predator mites on those apple leaves, and you'll get worse pest mite outbreaks. I don't know if that's the way it works with avocados. I don't think avocado growers spray surround enough for that to have been like a topic of research. I haven't ever seen it, so I don't know for sure, but that's what I have heard from apple growers.
That helps, thanks. Okay, unless there's any other questions, looks like those are all from the chat.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Carol.
I thought growing any plant under the avocado was discouraged because the roots of these other plants under the avocado drip line would take up nutrients and water and compete with the avocado roots for these resources. That's what I was taught.
Yeah, I think it's true, Carol. I think that's right. You know, you plant anything under an avocado tree, and it's going to take some of the water, it's going to take some of the nutrients, and so what you've got to do. But that's not to say that you can't do it, or that the trade-off isn't worth it. So, for example, in my own yard, I plant a bunch of things under my avocado trees. I put potatoes under there. I grow melons under there. I grow cilantro around the drip line. And then so sure, those plants are taking some of the water, taking some of the nutrients, but as long as you sort of add extra to make up for it, I've never seen any real problem with it. And so yeah, and and also, I mean, if you look at avocado trees grown in the wild, like if you've ever been down to, say, Central America, and you see avocados growing in a wild setting. They're growing with other plants all around them, all underneath them, and so it's not like avocados can't compete, but you just have to make sure you sort of make up for it if you do grow stuff purposefully under them.
I have a question. Greg, what's your soil like down there?
It's a sandy loam.
So you really don't have to do much to it.
Yeah, I'm lucky in terms of growing most everything, but especially avocados. It's got great drainage, and it's not particularly deep in most places, but even where it's shallow, the underlying like weathered rock under is porous, and so I'm lucky in my own yard. I've got good drainage, and I've got a sandy loam soil, and it's
those pictures kind of remind me of Riverside with the big rocks on the ground and like you're saying, the sandy loam.
Yeah. I'm actually close to Mount Woodson, and so if you've ever seen Mount Woodson, it's got those boulders all over it, and yeah. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, over Rubidoux area. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. Kind of over by where Louis' nursery is. Actually, not to give anybody, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I even visited I've visited a few properties in that area, and when I looked at the soil, I went, wow, this is just like mine. Yeah.
Right on, brother. Greg, I appreciate everything that you do.
Thanks, Casey.
All right, I think we're going to close it down. Greg, I am going to, this has been recorded.
Oh.
I'm going to send you, oh, we got another question.
Thanks. Yeah, I sent it through on chat. Greg, I asked you the question about the when the fruit sets and when to prune. So what I gathered is prune like in June after all the fruit sets, just to like let in some sunlight for the fruit, and then like again in winter. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you can do that. That would be it. So what I tend to do is I do a light pruning somewhere around June, and then I do a heavier pruning somewhere around March. So the light pruning in June just takes off basically some of that new growth that has happened during the spring. And then the heavier pruning, if necessary, in March, tends to, if I want to take off a lot of height on the tree, I'll do it at that time in March, because you don't always want to, it's hard to prune a lot in June, do a heavy pruning in June, because for one thing, you've got all your new fruit on there, and it's sort of emotionally hard to just take off all that young fruit. And then you might also have mature fruit on there still. And so you want to make sure you eat that mature fruit before you prune a lot. You don't want to expose it to sunburn either. And so anyway, so that's my routine with my Hass tree, a light pruning somewhere around June, and then any heavy pruning in the winter, basically March for my house, but it could be December, January if you had no frost worries.
Yeah, I'm in Venice, so.
Oh yeah, so yeah, you can do it anytime you want.
Okay, thank you.
It's nice to meet you.
Love you. I love your blog too. I just picked up on it a couple months ago.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, so Greg, I have recorded this presentation, and I will send you a link to the recording. Actually, I'll send you the whole recording. And people have asked if you would put it out on YouTube. I said it would be up to you, so I'll just leave that up to you. And they're also asking about your slides. So it's totally up to you how you want to share those.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll, yeah, sure. I'm fine posting it on YouTube, and then maybe I'll post my slides on my website, unless you have a better place you think I should post them, Dawn.
No, I think that's good because we have people here from all over the different California rare fruit growers and from your blog. So there's not just one place, but if you say you're going to put them out on your blog, then everybody can go there and get them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do that. Sounds good.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. And we hope to see you, possibly in our monthly meetings, the North San Diego California Rare Fruit Growers. You can find us on our website, and would be nice if I had posted that, but you can find us on the California Rare Fruit Growers main website, and then you can look at chapters, go to North San Diego County's chapter, and there'll be information on how you could join our particular chapter. And you'll get the Zoom meetings every month. All right, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.